Hey, my buddy Dan and I are super pumped to make this video today to show you how to install the 170 Mega Flare. Before, it's only been 2 flares in the very back. Now we have 5 fiberglass panels that we're going to install on the inside of the van. Most of the cuts are the same. We'll get inside and show you a few additional cuts. We send you all the same materials. You need the same hardware and the same tools to install. But other than that, it's a really similar install to the 170. Let's get up and check it out.
Alright, so we're inside the van today. This one has already been built out from a previous build, but that shouldn't stop anybody from going ahead and doing the same build because it's one and the same. On a standard flare, we're going to always use the back 2 bays. So since we're going to say a bay, that means the original window cutout. So there's 1 piece of sheet metal here, and there's 2 here. So all around this piece here, that would be 1 bay. And we always use the rear 2 bays for the normal flares. On a Mega Flare, there's going to be a couple options, but on this van, we're going to go this 3rd bay back here, the 2nd bay, and this 1st bay. All these are going to come out. And then on the passenger side over here, we're going to go with the 3rd bay and the 2nd bay. These are going to be cut out. We'll show you exactly where we're going to cut those in just a second.
All right, the first step is to cut out the pillars in all the bays that you're going to be cutting out. So we do that by drawing a straight line on the bottom and top edge of the pillars, and then using a grinder to cut the pillars out. And then after the pillars are out, we can use the nibbler to cut the sheet metal out.
So we're going to go ahead and show you guys where to cut these inner braces off. Generally on the Mercedes, you have a kind of large support beam on either side of all of these cutouts. But on the inside, these are basically here just to support this outside skin. So I've gone ahead and I've marked here, 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 and here, just a straight line across. We'll go ahead and cut all of that out with a grinder. In this case, we've also got a fair amount of glue that's back here, where the previous build has actually stiffened these up. Sometimes they don't get glued from Mercedes. So we're actually going to cut a larger section out of here just so we can get the next tool behind here to cut this out.
All right, now it's time to take the sheet metal out. Since we already have a hole in this back bay here, I'm just going to use this hole from the 1033 slider window that's already here. If you don't have a hole for your window and you're using a fresh van, of course, you can use a step bit, and we'll show you that in a minute.
Okay, so we've gone ahead and we marked all the parts out to be cut. We then went back with a grinder and cut these internal pieces off. The reason we do that is so that we can get what's called a nibbler behind here to cut that final sheet out. You could also just do all of this in one step with something like a jigsaw. We prefer this one because it's just a little bit cleaner. In order to use that nibbler, we use a step bit on a drill to punch a hole through the side of the van. This allows us to put the tip of the nibbler through and then run around. Before we do that, we also want to take these pieces off. The easiest way to do that is to take a knife of some type, open it up. You're going to find that there is a piece, a little bit of either foam or rubber or something like that. You're going to take a knife, you run down it to score it on both sides, just cut through that, and then it'll come right off. We've already done the one next to this one here, where we went ahead, we did cut that line, and then just pulled it straight off of there.
Alright, now that I'm just a couple inches away from cutting the whole piece of sheet metal off, now's a good time to send a buddy outside to hold it and catch it for you when it's going to fall, so you don't damage the outside of your van or anything else that it might hit on its way down. It's heavy and sharp. When you're cutting your sheet metal out, you want to be sure that your nibbler sits as flush to this inside wall panel as possible, so that you make the most of the space, and that when you fit your trim ring in at the end, the trim ring fits properly inside. I left a little bit too much right here, so I'm just going to come back with the nibbler and cut this off, and the same with any other spot around the outside of my cut that might interfere with the trim ring fitting snugly.
So a few times we talk about test fitting and just making sure everything fits correctly before you start your install. One of those times is when you actually get your windows and your flares together. What you want to do is just make sure you don't have the trim ring or the little trim fitting on the back side that clamps all together. Just place it right down in the window opening. just make sure it drops in fully and it's seated in there all the way. If you do that, the step is good. Okay, so we're on to the sanding and kind of prepping stage right now. There's better shirts to do this in. I'm in a white one and I'm all dirty. But you can see I've gone ahead. On the Mega Flare, the sanding pattern's a little bit different. On the back side, on the passenger side, we're gonna go all the way down to the bottom. The flare actually comes all the way down and sits into this rail. And then where all these meet, we're gonna leave a small gap between them. I went ahead and when I hung the flare up here, I went ahead and made a line, so it's sanded almost to that line, and then I left a little bit of gap over here as well for the other one to come in. This goes around like a normal flare, helps a little bit of gap here. These are all landing surfaces, and then I came almost up to the edge here when I left myself about a 1/2 inch as well here of paint that's not gonna get covered, so I didn't scuff that.
Hey, now we're gonna just wipe off all of the dust and things left over from after we sanded and scuffed up the van body. We're using denatured alcohol and a clean rag. The reason that we're cleaning it off is so that we get a really good bond with the adhesive between the flare and the van wall. All right, so now that Dan is almost done cleaning the outside of the van walls, I'm gonna use this clean metal primer to make sure that we cover all the cut metal to prevent rust. We use Rust-Oleum and a dauber. Be careful not to slop it all on the outside of your van, especially if you're using white paint on a black van. A little bit will do it. All right, so before we cut our holes, we test fit these once before, but now that we have our holes in here, I'm holding it up here again so we can make sure that we like the way that it looks all the way around before we go and put the adhesive on the flange. I like the way that the seam lines up all the way up and down. So we'll start at the front and work our way back to the middle and back positions next. So right now we're preparing the van to take the flares. I'm gonna drape, I don't know, 5 or 6 pieces of tape up and over the top so that when our flare has the glue on it and we press it into place, not only can it rest on these boards that we've cut to length with rags to protect the paint job on the van, then we'll drop the tape over the flare and that tape will help hold it in place while these boards help hold it up. Right now it's time to apply the adhesive to the flare. Again, this flange is on the inside of the flare. It's very similar to the other flare installs that we do. Same size bead, same old adhesive, same fiberglass parts. Tootsie Roll size bead. All 5 flares now. Check it out. We just followed the same process as we did on this first one. To all 3 on this side, and then we did the 2 on the other side.